Welcome to Book Talk. I'm Buffy Catella. This week, I'm joined with
Renee Senes.
So, Renee, why are you here today? What's the title of your new book and what is it about?
Okay, so we are here today because I've written this is actually my second book, but so we'll talk about book one too, of course. The new book is called Money and the Gray Divorce, which is gray, meaning if you look at my hair, gray hair. It's about getting divorced when you're over the age of 60. So my first book, which of course I just happen to have right here as well, is called Money and Divorce, Costly Mistakes You Don't Want to Make. And I wrote this about 3 years ago. And then when the pandemic set in, I said, what am I going to do while I'm stuck at home? And I decided to write Money and the Gray Divorce. So both books are not about how to get divorced. They're not a legal how-to. These are financial books. It's about what do the finances of a divorce look like? And then, what does it look like if you're over the age of 60 and you're getting divorced? Because there's lots of considerations, particularly in Massachusetts, that are very unique to being older.
Yeah, I had no idea that this was even, of course, I'm 20, so I'm not really thinking about divorce. It's not really on my radar, but yeah, I didn't even know that there's like a whole fight. Of course, I know that there is a financial aspect, but I didn't realize how complex it was. And obviously it's so complex that you have at least 2 books. Who knows, maybe a third book soon. I don't know what you're up to, but so did you self-publish these or do you have a publisher?
Yeah, so no, these are self-published. I didn't want to spend the time looking for a publisher. These are self-published. Both books are available on Amazon. And in large part, my intent was not to make money on these. It wasn't like I needed a publisher so that I could get book royalties and make money. What I wanted was something that could educate people, something that was going to be available. If somebody was going through a divorce and they said, what do I need to know? They could just hop on Amazon, find these, read about it, and get themselves oriented before they started the process.
Well, because I know that divorce is it's a complicated thing. Obviously, you're dealing with it all the time. So I'm glad that you have a resource for people so they're not just like deers in the headlights.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So how did you get involved in all this? Like, what's your story?
My story. Okay. So my story, just to give you a little background, I'm originally from New York. And then in my, I think, late 20s, I moved to Harvard. And I lived in Harvard for 35 years, raised my kids there, had a financial planning practice in Harvard. I have been an investment advisor and a financial planner for almost 30 years now. And during the course of my time in Harvard, I got divorced and, found myself with 2 kids and a big house saying, what do I do now? So 2 years ago, I downsized with the hopes of doing a lot of traveling, which I managed to do not this year, but the prior 2 years. And I've moved far away to West Concord. I'm back in Harvard and Bolton all the time, but I've got my business and my home now in West Concord. And I figured, or I sort of noticed when I got divorced, that even though I understood finances, I mean, that's what I did for a living, and I helped other people with their finances, I just panicked when it came to figuring out what was going to happen in a divorce. You know, part of the panic, of course, was I was close to 50 years old. I had 2 kids. You know, who was ever going to love me? Was I ever going to be able to retire? You know, was I going to get child support, alimony? How was I going to pay the mortgage? All the things that go through your head in a divorce. And I realized that there were probably other people who, if they understood finances or didn't understand finances, didn't understand the finances of a divorce. And so I became something called a certified divorce financial analyst, which I bet is something you've never heard of, because it's not one of those professions anybody has ever heard of.
I didn't even know that was a thing. So thank you.
It's a legitimate thing. It's called a CDFA, Certified Divorce Financial Analyst. And it's someone who has some degree of financial or legal background and then is trained in all of divorce law and all of the finances of a divorce. And then I decided I may as well just keep this going, and I became a divorce mediator. So I am a certified mediator. And I'm also certified in something called collaborative law, which is a form of getting divorced where each party has an attorney and there's a mediator or a coach, and all the parties agree to collaborate. So I just decided that there were people who were going to need help with this. And I will work as an advocate for one party. So if you, Buffy, were getting divorced, I could represent you. Or your husband, or the two of you could come to me together as a couple, and I would be a financial neutral, like a third party, neutral party, working with both of you.
That's difficult, I imagine, of trying to be a neutral party in something like that. I don't know. I feel like from what I've seen about divorce, it's usually, you know, I think of the movie like Marriage Story.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Or if you've ever seen, there's an even older one called The War of the Roses with Danny DeVito.
I haven't seen that.
Worth watching.
But it's such a thing that impacts everybody, but yet I feel like it's so like faux pas, like people don't want to talk about it. So I'm glad that you're, you know, putting something out there,
right,
so people aren't so lost about it.
Well, the demographics are that, you know, divorce in our country has leveled out, although there's some expectation that after the pandemic, the divorce rates will increase. But in part because of the Gray Divorce book, that is the fastest growing divorce demographic. Hard to believe that people in their 60s, 70s, even people in their 80s are getting divorced. And a lot of that has to do with longevity. You know, we're living longer than ever before. And you find yourself 75 years old thinking, gee, maybe I've got another 15 to 20 years to live, and I don't want to be living it with the person I'm married to. So that is the fastest growing segment of people getting divorced, are those over the age of 60.
Well, I know personally, like my uncle just got divorced and he's like 60. And I remember being like, why is he doing this? Like, you know, he's been with his wife for so long. Like, what's the point? But then you realize, like, okay, yeah, you're right. You know, people are living longer, and then they're looking at their lives, and they're like, I don't want to live the last, I don't know, 20, 30 years of my life with this person. I want to be like the person I want to be.
I want to be able to do the things I love with somebody, hopefully that loves me. And yeah, so it is. It's a real statistic in our world, particularly in our country, of people getting divorced later in life.
Well, and it's especially hard because people used to get married so much younger back then. So now they're at the point where, you know, I've just been told in my life that people just change. Like people change. Like they're not the same people as like, oh, if I were to get married now, the husband that I would have would not be the same person as he was when he was 20, when we're 70. And like, it's hard to share that, you know, what do you have in common anymore?
That's very true. And that requires work. And if you think about it, you know, when people got married many, many years ago, they didn't live. They got married maybe when they were 17 or 18, and they died by the time they were 45. So, you know, you weren't looking at people living well into their 80s or to their 90s. And that really does require a lot of adjustments. And sadly, many people just don't make that.
That's true. It's a difficult time, and especially with the pandemic, I'm thinking like divorce is going to go through the roof. I don't know, because I feel like people haven't been this close to each other
In
in
a
a
long time, right?
yeah. Why did you want to be a writer? It seems like you touched on this. Is that you when you got divorced, you didn't feel like there was anything to help you? Is that your main reason?
Well, I have to tell you, I didn't want to be a writer. I never had any intention of being a writer. I've taught classes for many, many years, and I started out with a class called Suddenly Single that I taught at Adult and Community Ed, and then Suddenly Single morphed into Money and Divorce: Costly Mistakes You Don't Want to Make. And I have been teaching that probably for 15 years at adult ed programs all across Massachusetts. And at the end of every class, somebody would invariably say to me, well, what do you recommend that I read so that I can understand more about this or figure out what to do? And one day I finally just said, why don't I just write the darn book myself? And so that's what I did. I took my class, Money and Divorce, and I wrote the book. And again, the goal was not to make money. So I just self-published it, got it out there on Amazon. Whenever I taught a class, I would give them out as part of the class, class tuition or the class fee that people paid. I would give out a copy of my book. And the second book, like I said, Money in the Gray Divorce, again, I was teaching a class. This one I had taught for the Mass Council on Family Mediation. And then I taught the same class for a large seminar of the Association of Divorce Financial Planners, and decided once again, just, take what I had written up for a class and put it into a book, instead of aiming it at the professionals, which my other presentation had been for. I just decided to aim it at the person who was going through the divorce. So it's not a technical book. It doesn't have a lot of technical terms in it. It's got a lot of examples. It's what if you did this and what if you did that, and what's the difference between the two of them? And my hope is that it's readily understandable and people just can take it and use it, information that you can use.
And that's great. So do you have any goals that you want to reach with your writing? Or are you just kind of like, well, you'll see where it goes. We'll see where a demand is, I guess. Is that your goal?
I think my goal is always education. Actually, when I think about it now, I have a master's degree in education. And I was a teacher for years before I became a financial planner. So it's not surprising to me that that's always my objective. If I'm working with a client on doing a financial plan, my goal is education. How much money do you need for retirement? Why do you need this much money? If I'm working with a client on selecting investments, my goal is education. Why do you want to be aggressive? What's your time horizon? What does this investment do for you? So whether I'm doing traditional financial planning or investment planning or working with people on getting a divorce, what I want them to do is understand what they've got. I want them to be comfortable dealing with money. I want them to feel empowered and competent and just say, I can do this. It doesn't mean you have to do it by yourself. That's why we have, it's not like I can understand what a medical condition is, but I'm still going to go to a doctor. So I want you to understand. So yeah, it's education. Anything I write, anything I teach, the goal is always just to educate my clients.
So do you have any general advice you would give somebody who's going through a divorce? I assume you have a lot. So just
yeah,
throw it all out there, because I didn't even know that you had gone through a divorce yourself. So you probably have your own personal accounts, but also your financial advice. So
right.
What do you?
Okay. So the first thing I would say going through a divorce is do your homework. You can hire the best attorney in the world, but you can't expect your attorney to do everything for you. There are things that you have to do on your own. And I feel like there are 4 basic things that everybody needs to know. And truly, this is 4 basic things that everybody needs to know, even you. This is something that even in your 20s, you need to know. You need to know what's coming in, what's going out, what you own, and what you owe. So coming in, obviously, where your income's coming from, whether it's from investments or from a salary, what's going out, what your expenses are, what you own, what's in your name, investment accounts, a house, a condo, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and what you owe, school loans, car loans, mortgage, credit card debt. So if you know those four basic things, own, owe, in, out, that's your financial picture. That's what you need to understand. What does it take to support your lifestyle? So if you were, I'm just trying to think of an example. Okay. So if I said to you, if you were getting divorced, Buffy, and you had two kids, and I said to you, you're going to get $30,000 a year in child support, would you be saying, oh, Renee, that's fabulous? Or would you be saying, oh my God, I don't know how to live on that? And unless you know what it takes to support your lifestyle, how are you going to agree to a divorce settlement? So you have to do your homework. You have to know the basics of what's it going to take for you to survive and how you get there, because otherwise you don't know if the offer on the table is a good offer or not. You know, you could be saying, oh, that sounds wonderful. And then you run the numbers and you say, wait a minute, $30,000 a year plus my salary, I can't survive on that. So no, that doesn't work. But if you hadn't done your homework, you wouldn't know that. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is build a good team if you're going through a divorce. No matter what form of divorce you choose, whether you mediate or do collaborative law, always have a good attorney. And the first thing I would say is consult with an attorney so that you understand what your rights are. And then hire a good attorney, hire a mediator, have someone like me, a CDFA, who can run those numbers for you. Have a good accountant, a divorce coach, a therapist really helps if you're going through a divorce, and put that team together. You know, friends are wonderful. My friends were my rock in my divorce, but what your friends tell you and what the reality is can be two entirely different things. So make sure you've got that team and put it together. So do your homework and have a team.
So, what advice would you give people? I guess I don't know. Maybe this is a need to need basis, but I'm trying to think about how you could give someone advice so that the divorce doesn't get messier than it already is. Do you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like, how do you get people to stay like civil in it all and not get lost in it?
Well, so I mean that's a hard part, and some of that really depends upon what your goal and your objective is. You know, I was very fortunate in my divorce. I had two kids, and my ex and I stayed friends. And so, for anybody with kids, I tell them, you want to be at your child's graduation, you want to be at your kid's soccer game, you want to be at their wedding, and you want to be able to do it without feeling like you can't go because your ex-spouse is going to be there. You know, one of the things I'm really proudest of is my son joined the Air Force. And when he went through some military training after about 2 years in the Air Force and graduated and was getting promoted. And he only got two tickets to his graduation. And he called up his dad and he called me and he said, I'd like you both to come. And he didn't say, I'd like dad to come, but I know he won't come because mom's coming. Or I'd like mom to come, but I know she won't come because dad's coming. He said, Mom and Dad, I want you there. So my ex and I flew to Oklahoma together, and we spent 5 days in Oklahoma with our son, and we flew home together, and we said goodbye and went back to our respective lives. And that's what I tell people, at least for me, that's your goal. You want to be able to get along. And you can't get along if you throw the other person under the bus. You know, if you try and gut them and take them for everything they're worth, you're not going to get along. So how do you stay civil? That comes back to doing your homework. And the homework is, how much do you really need? And of course, you know, that varies. Very honestly, I have clients who live on Social Security and they're very happy and they do just fine. And I have clients who can't live on $15 million because that's not what their lifestyle is. And I don't say one is right and one is wrong. It is what it is, but you got to know what it is for you. So figure out what it takes to support your lifestyle, figure out realistically what you need, and then sit down with an attempt with your spouse to be very civil and make sure everybody comes out able to survive.
That is great advice. You know, like I said, I'm coming from a place where I don't know much about this, so I feel like I'm informed. Hopefully, I won't. My friends won't be getting married and slash divorced anytime soon. But
Not. Yeah.
this is like good information for further down the line. Is there anything else that you want to talk about whatever you want to say, I would recommend just going for it.
Well, I would say that having been divorced, I feel like it gives me a unique perspective. So, as you said, both from the personal and the financial, I'm always willing, as I just did with you, to share parts of my story because I think it helps people to understand where I come from and what my objective is. I've made some mistakes along the way. One of the mistakes that I made in my divorce was I kept the house. I kept the big house in Harvard. And that's something that I see a lot of people, particularly women, want to do. They want to keep the house. They don't want to have to move the kids. They don't want to have to give up their friends. And, was it the right move? Maybe, maybe not, but it's one that usually causes a lot of financial heartache. So I would say to people, if you're contemplating divorce, let's really, really sit down and run the numbers and decide which assets you need to keep, because not all assets are created equal. A retirement plan that you can't touch until you're 70 is not the same as cash in the bank. Some come with taxes and some don't. So you need to understand all of that. I think the other big thing, and part of why I wrote the Money in the Gray divorce book, is Massachusetts no longer has lifetime alimony. And that's a big game changer. So if you get divorced when you're 65, you're not likely to get alimony. That may be it. And then we have to look at, do the assets that you have support you, and how do we make that work? So I think there's a lot of moving parts in sort of COVID rethinking life. I've taken my divorce practice and I've renamed it. I'm in the process of working on it. It's going to be called Divorce Financial Sense LLC. The website's a work in progress, but it will be up there. I have a divorce blog that's on my financial planning website, Senes and Schwalik, and I add content to that all the time. And it's always practically based. It's about, what do you need to do to figure out if you can buy a house? What do you need to do to figure out what it's going to cost you to rent an apartment? So I urge people to check that. Let's see, what else? I don't know. Is there anything else you can think of that we didn't go through today?
I don't think so. Well, I was just going to say, how do you stay positive during all this? Like in terms of, you're dealing with people getting divorced all the time. How do you, I feel like that it's almost like the job of a therapist almost, where it's like, how do you carry that weight with you all the time? What is that like?
And sometimes I say there is one hat of mine that is kind of therapeutic. What I like to think of myself as is the hub in a wheel. So I like to be able to take some of that burden off my clients. And because of that, I've built a really good team of my own. I've got a great real estate agent, a great mortgage broker. I've got a great accountant, and I can direct people to the mediator or the attorney that they need, and just kind of say, don't worry about going to find that estate planning attorney. I know one. I'm going to put you in touch. Don't worry about finding that realtor. I've got a great one. I'm going to connect you. And to me, because I'm helping people, I just have to keep in mind that that's what I'm doing. I'm helping. And that takes off a lot of the burden. There are times where I get triggered by something somebody's doing, or I find a situation really sad or really overwhelming. And then I just have to back up and say, my goal is to help. And that makes it all worthwhile.
Well, I think that's a good note to end on. Do you have anything else to say? Or
No. I mean, I encourage people, like I said, the books are available on Amazon, or if they want to reach out and call me. And I encourage people not to wait till the last minute. If you are going through a divorce the night before, and I've had people do this, they call me up and they say, I need some help. And I say, what's the issue? And they say, well, I'm going to sign my divorce agreement tomorrow. No, that's too late. Don't do a financial check-in when you've got the entire agreement and you're getting ready to sign it. The time to do it is before you're really even ready to get divorced. Call me and we can see what it would look like financially if and when you went through it. Or at the beginning of the process, let's do the finances. Don't wait until the very, very last minute and then figure that I'm going to just come in and say, oh yeah, everything's fine. Because I'm likely to say, no, that's really not fine. And that's too late. So be proactive and get in touch sooner rather than later.
I think that's great advice. Well, thank you so much for coming on Book Talk.
Well, thank you, Buffy. I really enjoyed this.
Do you have like social media or an email, something that you could plug?
The investment company, Senes and Schwalik, is on Facebook. And my email is just R for Renee, Senes, Senes, @gmail.com. And if you Google my name, you will find my website and my blog, as well as the book.
I would say you don't have a very common last name, so it's probably easy to find you.
It is, right. And actually, that's part of what Divorce Financial Sense was, Sense. If you misspell my last name, you'll get Senes Sense.
It makes sense.
Makes sense. Yes, it does.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you guys later.